Technologies, and today we're going to talk about the Retirement View software some more and how to keep it simple. And today we're going to talk about one of the foundational things you need to know is about how to do retirement expense modeling. But first, just to review, because a number of people on here weren't at the first training, so I wanted to talk once again real quick about why successful advisors use Retirement View. First of all, it's easy to learn and use. It's not complicated or confusing. Helps you close more prospects so you can increase your AUM or your annuity sales. It gets clients to open up about more of their assets. And it helps prevent what I call let me think about it syndrome, where they come to meet with you and they get confused and they walk out with let me think about it and you never hear from them again. All right, so let's move into what we're covering for today. We're going to do an overview of expense modeling, and we're going to talk about the 4 types of expense modeling in Retirement View and how you can do that in the software. So we're going to illustrate it in the software and show you firsthand how to do each of the 4 types. Okay, when we talk about expense modeling, what are we talking about? What do we mean by that? How much, the first thing we think of is how much does a client need in retirement? Okay, so focus on that. How much money do they need in retirement? Some call that their retirement income goal. Some call it their retirement expenses. Some call it their retirement needs. But to us, they all mean the same thing. How much money do you need to live on during retirement? And that's the first thing that you really put into the software to illustrate their retirement. All right, so now there's 4 types of expense modeling, and I'm going to go into each one in turn. I'm going to show you an example of each one. So the first type, retirement income goal plus inflation. All right, so let's see. And just for grins, I'm going to show you how I got this. I'm going to close this file. I'm going to close this. So normally when you open the program, you'll just see a bunch of red because there's really not any info. So go File, Open Client, and then we go get the client file that we want. I got tons of files from samples and meetings and looking at stuff. So I'm going to go down here, Sample for AMS. Okay. All right, so we have their names and birth dates. We already put that in. And actually, just to make the illustration simpler, I'm going to make them the same age. Yeah, let's just make them the same age. It just makes it slightly less complicated. Okay, so 65. Let's say Susan's retiring at the same year as John. We got Susan and John here. All right, so here's a basic picture. You see red. And we went over this all in the first session about how blue is the Social Security, yellow is the pension, red is the shortfall, green and gray is coming from their investments. So here we have a plan with John. He's got $400,000. You know, we could put in that he has some contribution. We can adjust the returns. We've got a Social Security benefit on him for $20,000 and a pension for $10,000. Susan, we really didn't enter much of anything, although we should probably put that she has a Social Security benefit as well. And there we go. And let's say that John makes, let's go back to John for a second. Let's say that he makes $100,000. Okay, so now we don't have any red. See, he gets a raise. That's fine. Okay, so what we're trying to illustrate is the retirement income goal plus inflation. So we click on Other Assumptions, and that's where we enter that. There's a box for the retirement income goal. That's in today's dollars, sort of like if you retired today, how much money would you need to live on? And then we have an inflation rate, which will inflate that into the future. So right now it's set to $35,000, which is way too low. John is making $100,000. So let's take 80% of what he's making now. Let's say they need $80,000 to live on. And voila, you see a bunch of red. So if I roll my mouse over the graph, the first bar, it says they need $84,872. See that in the goal plus expenses, that aqua blue box up here? The goal part is the retirement income goal, which is this number, plus inflation. The plus expenses part we haven't talked about. That's plus special expenses. So the simplest way to model their retirement needs, their retirement income, their retirement expenses, however you want to view it, is to go to other assumptions, enter their retirement income goal, and note this is an after-tax number, $80,000 after taxes, okay? Annual inflation rate, 3%, okay? So that's the simplest way. All right, let's go back to the slideshow. And the next option is retirement income goal plus inflation plus special expenses. Okay, so what are special expenses? Let's go back to our software. We're in the same plan here. Actually, I'm just going to save what we've been doing. There's a button on the right called Special Expenses. Let's click on it. And on here you can add special expenses. You can enter any lump sum expense or series of expenses that occur either before retirement or during retirement. So right now we're talking about the retirement expenses, but you could have something like, let's say, buy a second home when they're 55. Let's say the person was 40 and they had a goal. You could do things prior to retirement, but John and Susan, the ones we're looking at now, they're almost retired. They're like 1 or 2 years from retirement. So we're more talking about their retirement. So let's say, let me give you a lump sum example, big vacation or travel. Let's say they're going to take a, I don't know, a cruise in Europe. And let's say it's kind of pricey. Let's say they're going to plane tickets, they're going to tack on a week, they're going to take a long 14-day cruise. Let's say it's going to cost them $20,000. And let's say they're going to do that at age 68, like 1 year after they retire. So they got plenty of time to plan it, get all their stuff together. So all I do is set duration to 1, because it's a one-time lump sum. And we can put inflation on there if we think inflation is bumping up the cost a little bit. And we're going to pay for it out of any available investments that they have. So add that into the plan. Okay, so here in the second year you see a little bump up in their expenses. We go from 84 up to 108. That's the cruise, basically, that they're paying for. And so that's adding a lump sum. So you could add a bunch of lump sums. Like medical expenses, you know, let's say one of them needs, I don't know, some kind of dialysis treatment or something. I don't know. I'm going to put $10,000. And let's say that the costs of it are going up by 4% a year. And this happens when they're 69, well, let's say 70. One of them has this, and it's for the rest of their life. I'm going to put a big number like 40. So then the $10,000 is going to grow at 4%, start at age 70, and it's going to repeat for 40 years. Now, in the reality, the illustration is going to end before it reaches the 40 years, but the point is to run it to the end of the plan. Okay, so actually right in here you see it drop, and then you see it go up again, and it stays up because that added the special expense for 40 years. So we had 84,000, then we jumped up to 108,000 with the cruise, and we jumped back down to 90,000, and then the medical expenses kicked in, which pushes up to 104,000, including the inflation, and that continues. See that? Very subtle over here. I probably didn't make the amounts high enough. If I go into special expense, let's say the cruise was 40,000. Just making this up, and let's say the medical expenses were $15,000. And instead of 40 years, let's just do it for 10 years so you can see it go up and then drop again after 10 years. That way you can kind of see visually a little bit more what we're doing here. There you go. So you see a spike where we have the cruise, and then we see a 10-year spike where we have the medical expenses. Regardless, John and Susan are running out of money over here. They just don't have enough to cover all this. So if we go to other assumptions, 80,000, maybe they can live on 70,000. All right, that helped a little bit. All right, so this talk today is not about how to solve their retirement problems. It's mainly just how to model what they need in retirement. All right, so let's go back to our little presentation here. Let's go to the third method, modeling retirement in periods. This comes up not too often, but many times we get support requests, hey, you know, they need 80,000 to live on, but, you know, by the time they're 80, they're not going to be traveling, and we want to taper that off. They're really not going to need that much money. And so we can show you how to model retirement in separate periods where you can control the amount they get, you can control the inflation rate and all that. So let's look at that option. All right, now this requires some thinking here. So we have a retirement income goal, which gets added to any special expenses to form the target, which is this aqua blue tip, the tip of each bar. See the little aqua blue there? So the first thing the program does is, aha, how much do we need each year? And then afterwards, it's going to determine where the money is going to come from. So this aqua blue box is telling us how much they need to spend after taxes. It's a total after-tax picture. Okay, so we want to model in periods. Now, if we do retirement income goal here, this runs to the end of the plan, so we don't have much control over that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter 0 for that. Now, when I do that, the plan is going to kind of blow up a little bit because it's going to show you the Social Security as providing all the income needs, because it doesn't have any income needs as a target. It doesn't really know what to do. So then I'm going to go to special expenses. I'm going to turn off the cruise and the medical expenses. We're going to get rid of that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the first line, and I'm going to say first 5 years retirement. And we're going to say they need $80,000. And let's say the inflation is 3%. They're retiring at 67, so duration 5. So we're going to cover 5 years. We're going to still have a 3% inflation. But you know what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to put another line. I just did a copy and paste there to make it easy. Second 5 years. I'm going to make it 10 years. Second 10 years of retirement. Let's say they need $70,000. Still 3%. So I'm going to start that when they're 72, and duration will be 10. Still have a 3% inflation during the 10 years. And then the third line, I'm going to put rest of life. And we're going to ratchet them down to 60,000. So a very simple example, but it shows you how we're modeling it in 3 different periods. So this starts at 82. I'm going to put like 30 to run to the end. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to add that into the plan. And we should see 3 distinct periods. Yep, we do. Okay, so here's the first 5 years, right in here. Then you see it drop. And we see the 10 years here. Then we see it drop again. And there you go. All right? So that modeled it in 3 different periods. So you can model as many periods as you want. If you think about it, you could model each and every year if you wanted to. You know, age 67, they need this. Another line, age 68, they need that. Another line, age 69, they need this other amount. So you could get really detailed with it. Most people want to model 2 or 3 periods. Now here's a super advanced trick, and I'm only showing you this because you're on this training and I want to give you some extra added value. Notice these non-linear bumps. Now how often are people going to really take a $10,000 drop in their expenses unless maybe they paid off their mortgage or something. So if you really wanted to taper it, I can go right out here to the 5 years. You see we've got the inflation, so in 5 years it's $95,524. So if I wanted this more tapered and I just want to control the inflation rate, here's another way I could do this. I could say second 10 years, $95,524, and put a 0% inflation rate. So it'll step into age 72 right where the last period left off, but then maybe I only want a 2% inflation at that point. Let's add that into the plan. So now we've more shaped it. We kind of shaped it a little bit right there, so there's not a big drop. And then out here it says 114,160. So I could go back on here and I could go 114,160. Get rid of the inflation rate, and then it steps into 82 right there. And again, maybe they only have a 1% inflation. Now I'm not saying these inflation adjustments are realistic. I'm just showing you what the program can do. The reality is, as people get older, they have a lot of medical expenses, and medical expenses are going up at the highest inflationary rate of practically any expense in our economy. That and college costs, both of those are getting skyrocketing inflation. But you see how we tapered it right there? So we just kind of shaped it the way we want. So you got a lot of power and flexibility in the program to shape their retirement picture as far as their income needs the way you want to do it. Okay, and mainly to meet the client's needs. If the client thinks they're not going to need that much later, then you can model it if you want to. The reality is most people's medical expenses when they get in their 80s just skyrocket, and that more than makes up for anything they're not doing as far as travel and buying clothes and buying furniture and stuff like that. Okay, let's go back to our list. So we've looked at the 3 different ways there, retirement income goal and inflation. Then the second way, we can add special expenses and layer those on, either in lump sums or series. Then we can model retirement in periods. That's the one we just looked at. And the fourth way is the total detailed budget. Okay, so this is for all you engineers and you CPAs and all the people that are great at balancing their checkbook to the penny on a weekly basis. So here's your total detailed budget option. And it's very similar to what we just did. Again, you're going to put 0 for the retirement income goal and not use that. And you're going to totally rely on special expenses. All right, now we're going to get rid of the periods. Now, ideally, we'd have a button that says, click here to do a total budget. And we may add that at some point, something we've been thinking about. But for now, yeah, you'd either have to import from Excel. Note you can copy and paste from Excel. But otherwise, you're putting in your budgetary categories. If anybody wants one, we have a couple of Excel spreadsheet examples of budgets that people have put together that we can send you. So I'm just going to put down a few items like groceries, electric, cell phone, cable. Let's see, their cable bill. Let's say you have your car payments. We got your mortgage. We got your auto insurance. Let's say we have your gas for your car. So you got clothing, entertainment. Let's see, dining out. Let's see, miscellaneous. Probably a lot of people have miscellaneous. So anyway, you can go on and on. So I'm not going to do this. Now, one thing you got to know is this is an annual dollar amount. We're not doing the groceries on a weekly basis or monthly. Right now, everything in our program is annual. So maybe we'll change that at some point. But you'd have to estimate, okay, I spend $100 a week on groceries, 52 weeks, so I'm doing $5,200 on groceries. That's going up at 3%. I need that for the rest of my life. Electric, it's $200 a month, so that's $2,400 a year. And again, I'm just making this up. So let's just pretend all of it's rest of their life items. So we put 30 all the way down. Actually, probably ought to put 40 on there. Maybe clothing we don't do the whole time. Maybe we only do that for 15 years. Entertainment, 15 years. Dining out, we'll do that for 15 years. Miscellaneous, I don't know, 30 years. So then you can go through and put these different amounts in here. Say I have a $300 car payment. Let's say they have a mortgage for $2,000 a month. Car insurance, let's say it's, I don't know, $1,800 a year. Gas, $100 a month. Clothing, entertainment. Okay, so I just made up a bunch of numbers right there. It's not going to add up to 80,000 by any means, but you can go through and pick and choose some inflation rates. You could look up, inflation rates for the different types of items. And just make sure you put it on the after it starts too, because that's during the 30-year period. The other one is before it starts, which for now in this plan is only a couple of years away. I'm trying to match up the same ones I put on the other side, just for consistency's sake. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to add that into the plan. And again, that's just a very simple budget. Obviously, there's going to be more detailed budgets that you could do. And yeah, I needed to put a few more years on here because the 30 years ends right here at 96. So special expenses ideally would need to be 35 or 40 years on here. I wish we kind of had a fill down, but we don't. Add that in. Okay. So again, I only put in like 10 items, and we created a whole budget. I've seen people send these in, and they have a car that they bought every 8 years, and they put it on a roof on their house in 20 years, and they did this, that, and the other. And it was very detailed, really planning out all their expenses. So there you have it. That's your last way to model expenses. Let's see, any questions? Okay, one question is for special expenses, you have inflation before and after it starts. Could you explain that? Okay. Before the start age is this age here, age to start expense. So if I start the expense at 67, but right now they're only 65, then this inflation is occurring in the period between 65 and 67. So it occurs between now and their retirement when we have the expense starting. The inflation rate after it starts, after start age, is during the multi-year period. So if we set 40, then it's going to use this inflation rate every year during the 40-year period. Hopefully that helps. Now, when you have a lump sum, the after it starts is irrelevant. You could set it to 200%. It wouldn't have any effect. Because a lump sum, the only one that applies is the inflation rate before it starts. It inflates it, inflates it, inflates it, then dumps the lump sum in, and then there's no other years, so there's no after. There's no repeating period to inflate it further. So, so if duration is 1, then the inflation rate after it starts is just not used. Okay, looks like that's all the questions we have. We're coming to the end here. I don't really have anything else to add, but just to know the primary starting point in the software calculations is, hey, how much do they need every year? And the first thing it does is draw this blue target, that light blue target of expenses, income needs, retirement goal, whatever you want to call it. It's how much money do they need to live on. And then the program will start applying Social Security, the blue, yellow, pensions, cash infusions, which we haven't talked about today, but we talked about last time. And then it'll start dipping into the investments. Red means they're running out of their investment money for the most part, and they can't meet their retirement income goal, retirement needs targets. All right, that's all I have for today. It's Tim Turner, Tora Technologies, signing off. Thanks, and happy planning. We'll talk to you next time.